Good evening, and welcome to Nerd Rage. Nerd Rage, episode 175. I almost forgot, but I didn't. Shut up.
You weren't drinking so much, but forget.
You shush. I have brandy today. Still mixed with things, but brandy nevertheless. I mean, brandy isn't as painful as whiskey, no, but it's still. And I don't really feel like getting drunk. I even drank water before this. Wait, I didn't eat. Crap. I do one thing, but I don't do the other. I ate last time, but I didn't drink water. This time I drank water, but I didn't eat any food. I am a genius. I am an
Yeah, you're
absolute.
really good at this alcoholism thing.
Shut up. At least I wasn't actually drunk on camera like someone was once.
Whatever.
Anyway. So, Shannon has all the ideas for what we're going to talk about this week. So, I'm going to.
I did all the legwork this time.
I'm going to give the floor over to her. Or hit her with the floor. I'm not sure which yet.
Okay, that's the drunk person talking right there. Um, well, I tweeted a couple of things that I thought we could discuss. Um,
Right.
and it's, culturally. Um, and naturally, Ose didn't read them because one of them, of course, is about the death of reading is threatening the soul.
I should
And
point
then
out
the other
the
one is,
I would say, well, I should point out the irony of writing a relatively short article about, the death of reading because of reading relatively short articles that kills our attention span.
well, but he wants you to have plenty of time to get to books, which is the whole point. It's supposed to be deep reading that we're missing out on.
I know. I'm just
Okay, so I guess we'll go with that one first. It's by Philip Yancey in the Washington Post. The death of reading is threatening the soul. I do actually believe this, and I've shared stuff before about how our tendency to get caught up in social media and read, quick sort of short blogs and blurbs and this and that has affected our memories. He's kind of coming from a different perspective in that we're not reading enough to study, and study is it's is something that as Christians especially we're supposed to be doing. I mean, we're supposed to read and study the word and hide it in our hearts and sort of have it always at the forefront of our thoughts. So he was talking about his own personal crisis where he used to love reading, and he said books help define who I am. They've ushered me on a faith journey, have introduced me to the wonders of science and the natural world, have informed me about issues such as justice and race. More importantly, they've been a source of delight and adventure and beauty, opening windows to reality I would not know.
hmm
My crisis consists in the fact that I am describing my past, not my present. He goes on to say, the internet and social media have trained my brain to read a paragraph or two, start looking around. And that's very true. I know everyone complains about pop-up ads, but there's always if you like this, then read one of these and all this,
hmm
ads and videos and different things sort of embedded. So we are constantly distracted, even when we're trying to focus on a topic. It isn't conducive to really focus.
Right.
And he said neuroscientists have an explanation for this phenomenon. When we learn something quick and new, we get a dopamine rush. Functional MRI brain scans show the brain's pleasure centers lighting up. And it talks about an experiment where rats would keep pressing a lever to get a dopamine rush, choosing it over things like food and sex. So the interactions that we have online with social media and email and text and all of this kind of stuff, it sort of fulfills that rush that we get. So we're constantly going back for it, but it is fleeting, and it's not something that is going to improve our concentration, our knowledge, or our focus. So he goes on to talk about the religious implications of this, and brings up the book, what is it? The Benedict Option. That's much later in this. Yeah, the Benedict Option, where the people of faith are urged to retreat behind monastic walls, as the Benedictines did, saying that they preserved literacy and culture during one of the darkest eras of human history. He said, I don't completely agree with this, but I'm convinced that the preservation of reading will require something akin to the Benedict Option. I know we're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world and all of that. So I agree with him. I don't think that we need to necessarily completely shut ourselves off, but we should probably do something like what he describes from an article in Business Insider, which had a study, the habits and practices of pioneers such as Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, and how most of them have a practice where they set aside an hour a day, at least an hour a day, for deliberate learning.
Right.
And how people like Warren Buffett even take that much, much further and end up, Warren Buffett, it says, pointed to a stack of books and said, read 500 pages like that every day. That's how knowledge works. It builds up like compound interest. All of you can do it, but I guarantee not many of you will. So I do think that we should not necessarily shut ourselves off from the world completely and devote ourselves to study, but that we should deliberately make time for it. And just reading in general, it's crucial for just to sort of develop that ability to focus, to understand and rationalize, and to have a sort of deeper connection with what we're reading than sort of skimming over things and just reading blurbs and getting a rush and then forgetting about it 15 minutes later.
Right.
So
I'm trying to think what to add to this.
Ready?
I'm trying to think what to add to this, but I'm sort of I'm coughing, but I'm also slightly drawing a blank there.
You need to read more. Oh, come on.
I mean, I do need to read more. I'm not as much as I enjoy reading, I'm not as avid a reader as I ought to be. I can't deny that. No, that's in part because I don't.
It used to be so easy.
Well, for me personally, I used to live in a town where like the library selection was kind of poor. Like Kearney's library selection wasn't that great, and it's like there was very few books that ever really caught my eye. Also, it also takes a little bit for a book to catch my eye. Depends on the genre and everything, but there's also the fact that in terms of just say purchasing books, I didn't really, I'm not really at liberty to just buy a huge lot, just buy books constantly. In part because I'm not really one to just like go out and buy things. Like I try to save a lot, and to the point where I'm kind of stingy. In fact, something I will not deny, but. In In terms of reading, well, what I'm reading now actually is ever hear of the book I Am Number Four?
I Am Number Four. I know I haven't read it.
It's kind of a science fiction-y book. Not quite science fiction. It's more like science fantasy, but anyway, point remains. And it's clearly aimed at it's clearly aimed more at young adults than yes, it's clearly more aimed at young adults than anything. But that's what I'm currently reading. It's not the most engaging book in the world, but it's not.
It's not from the Divergent stuff, is it?
I don't think so.
I'm just wondering because there was a character named Thor.
No, that I'm aware of. But yeah, it's definitely aimed at young adult readers, and go away, screensaver. And I'm definitely like a little iffy on it. Like it's like the most engaging thing. It's part of a series. In fact, it's the first book in a series. But that's I'm at least I'm reading something different this time. At least I'm reading something different and new. But not that I haven't before. Reading the Dune saga was definitely new and different, but I never did that right up now that I think about it.
It used to be just I was always reading constantly, and I mean we don't even have a library in this town outside of the school.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I live in the boonies, as you say. So I would either get books from friends, yard sales. My aunts would give me books.
Mm-hmm.
Find stuff in the library at school. But I was always reading. And even when I didn't have anything to read, I would read. We had a set of encyclopedias, and I would sometimes pick up a dictionary and read that. So, yeah, it was just, I don't know, a need to constantly read. And I know that in the last 10 years, I haven't read nearly as much as I should. In fact, sometimes I would go weeks or months without reading anything at all outside of, articles and blog posts and just sort of short and generally useless things. So, that's something that it's not that I'm, reading War and Peace or, like Dante's Inferno or anything like that, but I am reading,
Right.
sort of deliberately making the time to do that and setting my phone or whatever away when I'm reading on my tablet, because I have some Amazon books that I read. I'll just turn the Wi-Fi off so that I don't get the constant notifications chiming in. And I don't know, you probably missed my tweets last night, like 99.9% of the rest of the population. But
I actually did see them. But I caught, one ended up popping up into things you might have missed thing, and I looked at it. Excuse me. Don't know why I'm coughing so much.
Well, yeah. I honestly feel like one reason that people are so contrary and argumentative and unhappy just in general is first of all, we're not making time for just solitude, for peace and quiet, for contemplation. And so as an extension of that, we're neglecting something that our soul needs. We cannot hear, the still small voice if we're constantly, consuming lots of noise from everything else, all other quarters. And someone pointed out that, it's kind of, that's sort of the point, is people are trying to fill their lives with lots of noise so they don't have to contemplate and think, spiritually, which is true. I think too, especially for believers, we understand that we're made in the image of the Almighty Creator, which means that we are made to be creators ourselves. And I think, we tend to neglect that a lot. And,
Right.
We don't create things for just the sake of creating. We don't appreciate anything, the joy of something beautiful that came from our own work or talent or whatever. And whatever it may be, whether it's, art or poetry or music, or, just whatever that you think of in terms of creativity, we're just not sort of fulfilling that part of ourselves, our souls that sort of desires to create.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's all sort of part of the same conversation of,
Right.
neglecting what the soul requires. I think reading falls into that because we're not training our brains, first of all, to absorb information or contemplate things. And there's no way that we can, sort of develop a greater understanding of God's word by osmosis, just by having a Bible nearby.
I'm kind of imagining that now, though. Okay, occasionally just ethereal words just float up from the Bible. Random passages. They float directly to your skin and just pass through.
Sleep with it under your pillow.
You sleep with it as your pillow. Wake up with like a dozen paper cuts in the morning.
Would that be considered penance?
For Catholic. Zing. Anyway.
Well,
yeah, the
do you
article's
want to take the next topic?
yeah, the article's definitely an interesting read and definitely definitely worth considering, which is why I'm actually kind of quiet. I'm actually like actively considering it. I'm not just like not just spacing out here. I am tired, so I am a tiny bit spacey, but not as spacey as you would think. Anyway. All right, and you're talking about the other article that you tweeted out.
Yeah, moral nihilism.
Yeah, students are becoming moral nihilists. And I must admit, I actually found reading this to be somewhat remarkable because I can't even say that things were this bad when I was in university, and that was less than 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I can't say that things were that ridiculous when I was in school or when I was in university. Where you have students who, coming into classrooms and being completely unable to say whether or not the Holocaust or female genital mutilation are evil or if slavery is evil. Like, that is something that is completely and totally unfathomable to me. Shut up, cat. Yeah, Smokey's still here, and he's still howling. The problem being that
moral relativism into just a complete absence of morality at all.
Was that?
I said it's gotten past the point of moral relativism to where there's just an absence of morality.
Right. And it's not even like, and we're not talking about people who are like immoral. We're talking about people who are amoral. To people who aren't actively being bad per se, just people who don't recognize that there's even a moral framework to begin with. I saw something. I looked that way because I thought I saw like a bug on the wall or something. It was my shadow. Shadow my finger because I moved my hand really close to it. Anyway, and that's frankly kind of, I don't know. It's kind of baffling, frankly. I never thought, I'd be reading the words. Bear in mind, this article came out last year, but I never thought I'd be reading. People talking about young people being unable to say whether or not slavery is evil. Whether or not slavery is inherently evil. It's like I'm not even sure how to talk about it because it is so antithetical to everything I've ever learned, anything I've ever been taught, anything I've ever believed. We're talking about, because we're not even talking about politics here. We're talking about fundamental. You shush. What in the world? What do you want? What do you want? I'm not paying you.
I think. He writes, students enter my classroom believing nothing is truly good or evil, and that moral beliefs are the result of what society says. Their moral nihilism can be seen when they write good and evil with scare quotes as, good or evil.
Scare quotes? What?
And when they demonstrate their desire to tolerate any evil imaginable as long as it is practiced in another culture. Teachers are apparently so worried that moral disagreements will lead to conflicts that they teach that everyone is entitled to their opinion. Well-meaning liberal teachers think that they are thereby promoting tolerance, but they are actually unintentionally producing moral nihilism in their students, leaving them with the moral compass of a psychopath.
Mm-hmm. He probably just wants someone to pet him. But I'm the only one that's home right now. We've been the only one that's been home all weekend. Anyway.
When challenged, he said that students will agree that it would be immoral to ask someone for a ride to the airport, but then refuse to ever return the favor. In other words, making it personal.
Mm-hmm.
Students also agree it would be unfair to distribute grades in class arbitrarily. They agree that helping the elderly with their taxes is morally good, and intentionally running them over with their cars is not. The point is to show them that our most basic moral intuition concerns justice. And then he goes on to say, most students do, in fact, behave in a moral fashion despite the moral nihilism promoted in schools and colleges, but these false doctrines can only undermine their dedication to pursuing moral goods, and they can also leave them incapable of thinking coherently about how to deal with Muslim terrorism or other crucial moral issues of the day. Without a coherent moral framework, students are prone to crazed witch hunts and scapegoating, and that's where I think it carries over into the political realm, because I believe that a lot of what we see as social justice, insanity, is moral nihilism looking for justice, in any square, and that's where you get these witch hunts and scapegoating.
Mm-hmm. And it's also where you get people say, people supporting, like say Linda Sarsour or whoever, however you pronounce her last name, but supporting people like that, not caring at all, that you're supporting, people who support Sharia law or support cop killers or whoever, completely not caring about doing that. They're just doing it. I mean, it's an extension of that as well. The inability to see that, these people are bad. Like, like they'll complain about, like people they perceive to be on the right, like say David Duke or whoever. Not that anyone on the right ever cared about David Duke ever, but just using him as an example because he was the first name that came to mind. and you see it there where they care about like, well, the rights guy, it's David Dukes, but you're supporting someone who's actively who's actively promoting Sharia law in the United States of America. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. You know.
But yeah, I'm just kind of extrapolating there. The ideas at work.
Right. It is kind of weird where they decide, that framework should be. But it's never consistent because what they use to justify action in this case or but not in that case, it changes constantly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no foundation, there's no absolute, and so the goalposts are always shifting for what is right and wrong, and when it's right and wrong, and where it's right and wrong.
Right. Exactly. And I find that really troubling.
Oh yeah.
For lack of a better way to phrase that, I find it extraordinarily troubling. Because honestly, it's like you look at internet debates and everything. Say what you will about the value of debating people on the internet. You see this problem all the time because did I mention this? Did I mention this last week, or did I just talk about it with Ruth on Friday? Because we hung out on Friday, by the way.
I think you might talk about it with Ruth.
I think I talked about it with Ruth. But what I was going to say is that it completely slipped my mind. Oh gosh, no, why?
Debating on the internet and go.
Debating on the internet. Say what you will about the quality of debating on the internet. That's the last thing I said before I got distracted. Oh, no, it was a good point. It was a good point.
Bless your heart.
Oh yeah, I got it. The thing about it is that the thing about it is that you can see this problem. You can see this problem all the time because on Twitter, for example, I started following some not necessarily conservatives, but I started following some sort of right of center people, both conservative and libertarian leaning sort of people, just because I had to get some sanity. After the election of Donald Trump, I had to get some sanity back into my timeline. I was so frustrated with seeing leftist crap on my timeline all the time that I just started, I followed a handful, like Neon Taster and a couple of others. Just to inject a little bit of sanity in my timeline. It's actually helped a lot. It's made Twitter 10 times more tolerable. But the thing about it is that, I end up seeing these debates. And I'm like, and we discussed this time and again, it's like, how do you have a discussion with people like this? How do you have a discussion with someone whose moral framework is so non-existent? Let's be honest, it's non-existent. That's the problem. They don't even have a baseline, because the thing about having a debate, having a reasonable, rational discussion with someone, even if you end up disagreeing in the end anyway, is the underlying assumption that there is some sort of base framework from which you're working off of. Whether that framework is some sort of base morality or that framework is some sort of basic, not manners. The word is similar. What word am I looking for? It's not manners, but it's similar. It's etiquette. Some sort of basic etiquette. To have a discussion. You don't even necessarily have to have the same basic moral framework. You just have the same basic etiquette. The same idea that we may be coming from different directions, but at the end of the day, we're coming from the same place. Maybe not the same moral place. Maybe not this. But at least the same sort of. Now I need more synonyms. Crap. It's not working. But the same sort of.
You have to have a starting point.
Basically,
in order to have any kind of discussion, where you have a general understanding of. basic ideology, like, what you believe and why you believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And in those beliefs, if they shift, depending on who you're talking to, or what the object of the topic is, then you cannot have a discussion because they're just too changeable.
Right.
You know.
And of course, part of the problem is that, as the article states that we already mentioned, it pushes the person, the moral nihilist, to extremes. They engage in extreme behavior over the most mundane things.
Oh yeah, it was weird. Something very mundane. And I know that leftists get this way, but Republicans lately have, any sort of disagreement, and it's like, well, why don't you just move to Canada? Like,
Well, I might just
don't
do that,
know
eh?
how we get there so quickly. But just in general, there's, it is there are these extremes that, and it seems to happen, when you begin to try and develop that framework, like to say
Right.
that something is inherently good or bad or right or wrong, or acceptable or obnoxious or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When you begin to try and get that framework in place so that you can have the discussion, they just lose it.
Right.
Like, how dare you have any sort of starting point with which to work from, because then they might have to be consistent.
Though it does sound a little mean when you phrase it that way. But but that said,
Meant to be, I was just saying.
though I'm thinking about it, and I'm kind of, why am I hearing myself?
I don't know.
Like just suddenly, with what's going on? It's just started. Okay, it stopped. I think. Okay, good. No, like something like it just started picking up like the audio from your end, and it like really threw me off because you can't hear yourself speak while you're speaking, or else it messes you up. That's what a voice jammer does. It repeats your own words back at you on a slight delay, and makes it very, very difficult to speak unless you start talking over yourself. I've seen YouTubers use it. It's kind of weird and funny because what ends up happening is that you end up yelling over yourself so that you drown yourself out. Anyway, where was I going before I got thrown off by that? You see, you can tell I'm tired because I'm getting thrown off really easily right now. Shut up, internet connection problem. Where was I before I got off on that minor tangent? What did I say?
I don't remember.
Oh gosh. Oh no. Not again.
You so thoroughly follow your detours of thought.
Yes, I end up stuck in another town.
You really commit to them.
I mean, I really shouldn't be embarrassed at this point because I've done it so often on the show, though at least it's not live. Like this is gonna honestly, this is gonna feel way less embarrassing because it's pre-recorded than if it was live. Because when it's live, you're under you have like a time pressure to kind of get back on track. When you're recording, you can do whatever the hell you want.
You
Also,
do you, OC.
Also, what is happening to the internet connection right now? Your connection's gone so bad right now. The frames have dropped to like dropped to like 5, and it's blurry, and it's like someone using your internet.
No, I just Do I need to go beat somebody?
Maybe. I have no problem with beatings, as we all know. I mean, what? I mean, other people beating other people. You know, never mind.
Beating continue until the internet connection improves.
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that. Also, I've completely lost my train of thought from before, so it's not. I don't think there's much point in trying to regain it.
Okay, well, let's just end that segment of the show.
Yeah, and let's hope this internet connection stabilize. Let's hope this connection stabilizes a bit because you are really blurry. I can hear you, but your visuals have gone to hell.